Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to be before the Banking Committee to talk about an issue that I think is long overdue here in the United States Senate. It is important to be in discussion about this 40-year-old ban that we have had in place in this country that prohibits the export of crude oil from the United States. Now, keep in mind that it is perfectly legal, fair, legitimate, done every day to send our refined products overseas. It is only the crude oil that we are limited. And I will just note, for those that are interested in interesting factoids, there are 3 items that are on the short list that are prohibited from export within this country. One is crude oil, the other is horse meat for slaughter, and the third is the export of western red cedar. And we're not going to go into western red cedar or the slaughter of horse meat here this morning, but I think it is important to note that crude oil has been on that list now for some 40-odd years. I brought this issue up about a year and a half ago before a group of energy experts around the world. And I called at that time for a lifting of this outdated ban. And rather than urging legislative action, I acknowledged that this was something that had been in place for decades, that not only members of Congress needed to be educated on the issue, but people around the country needed to understand why the ban was put in place in the first place and why now, 40 years later, it's time to lift it. And so I called for 2014 to be the year of the report. And boy, did they do the reports. Over a dozen reports have come out looking very critically at this issue, speaking to many of the points that Senator Brown has raised. Most pertinent is, what is this going to mean to me and the price that I'm paying at the pump? That's what everybody really wants to know. We can talk about the high policy initiative, but at the end of the day, they wanted to know, is it going to raise the price at the pump? And report after report, study after study says no. So that's important for us as policymakers to understand. It's also important for people around the country to understand. As we've seen through this year of the report, oil exports is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for us, Mr. Chairman, to become an energy superpower, to send a signal to the world that we are ready to lead on issues of energy and the environment, to empower our allies and to compete against our foes in a way that doesn't involve sending troops in. It doesn't involve the boots on the ground. It is effectively using our energy resources as a diplomatic tool, as a strategic asset to help lift up our economy, create jobs, while at the same time lowering gasoline prices and increasing domestic energy production. And I say energy because it's not just oil. We know that oil and natural gas are linked as well. I'm very pleased to be able to work with my colleagues from North Dakota, Senator Heitkamp, and I have worked on this. She has introduced S. 1312, the Energy Supply and Distribution Act, and S. 1372, which is the American Crude Oil Export Equality Act, working with Senator Hoeven throughout the process on these issues. But both of these bills lift the ban on oil exports, while at the same time preserving the emergency authority of the President. I think that that's an important aspect of the legislation that you will consider. You're going to hear from good witnesses this morning, but let me just make 2 very quick points. The deal that the administration has presented us concerning Iran's nuclear program will entail the lifting of sanctions against Iranian oil in the near future. And analysts can differ about the exact timing of when we may see the additional Iranian barrels entering the global market. The country already exports over 1 million barrels per day. But whether it's 6 months or whether it's 18 months, Iranian oil is returning as a result of this deal. So what does that mean to us in this country, a nation that has been told you cannot export? We're going to let Iran go out onto the global market engage in sales of their oil, allow them to amass resources and wealth as a benefit of this. Well, at the same time, we're going to tell our U.S. oil producers, no, you may not. We are effectively sanctioning U.S. oil producers if we lift the sanctions on Iranian oil and do not address our ability to compete in that global market here. American oil producers will be uniquely disadvantaged by this agreement. The antiquated ban on oil exports means that American workers will be unable to sell American oil to some of our closest oil allies. Right now, Japan is receiving oil from Iran. They would much rather be receiving oil from us. South Korea, the same. The Iranian government's going to be able to sell its own oil to our friends, to our trading partners, and our companies have to sit with their hands behind their back. I'm not even going to address the issue of what exactly Iran will be doing with its newfound revenues. I think we all have suspicions about that. That's a subject for another day, and I know that it's a subject that this committee is going to be dealing with. Just very briefly, we all know what's going on the floor with the Highway Trust Fund and the reauthorization. The proposal currently that's on the table is 101 million barrels sold from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which is offered as an offset to the 3-year extension. This oil is going to be dumped onto a saturated domestic market, and I know it doesn't happen all on that first day. It goes out over a period of years. But again, federal oil will be competing with American oil because American oil can't be exported right now. I think that this is reckless. I don't think that this makes sense. So I think both the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and the Iranian sanctions issues are issues that really illustrate just how important it is that we lift this ban. So I thank the committee for taking this issue up. Know that in the Energy Committee we too are looking at it, but these are issues that are timely for this day, and I appreciate your focus.
Thank you, Senator.